I was never one to believe in coincidences or omens, but the night it all began defied all my reasoning. I was walking home after a particularly long and monotonous day, strolling through the silent streets of my neighborhood. The sky was overcast and the yellowish glow of the streetlights cast faint shadows on the sidewalks. There was nothing extraordinary about the route, until I suddenly noticed something unusual. In the middle of a park bench, partially hidden in the dim light, rested a porcelain doll. Its features were delicate and at the same time inexplicably unsettling. Its eyes, immense and empty, seemed to capture something I couldn't understand. There was an ancient sadness in them, a melancholy that contrasted with its inanimate appearance. For a brief moment I hesitated. After all, why would a doll be there, abandoned in the heart of the city? Even so, driven by a curiosity I couldn't quite explain, I approached. At first, the scene was subtle. The doll remained still, almost imperceptible under the diffuse light. I touched its cold and delicate surface, as if seeking some connection that could unravel the mystery. Without fully realizing what compelled me, I decided to take it home, thinking it might simply be a lost object, without an owner or a story. At that moment, what seemed like nothing more than a whim of fate began to morph into something insidious. I arrived at my apartment, a modest and cozy space where I believed I had control over my own reality. I placed the doll on the living room table without much thought and went about my usual routine. However, in the following days, I started noticing subtle but disturbing details. At first, they were mere fleeting glimpses. As I passed through the hallway, windows reflected a small, pale figure that vanished around the corner. On occasions, when I was engrossed in a book or watching a movie, I would sense a pair of eyes silently observing my every move from behind the glass of the mirror. I tried to rationalize it, blaming fatigue or tricks of the mind caused by exhaustion. But with each passing day, the feeling grew stronger. One morning, upon waking up, the strangeness became undeniable. As I opened my eyes, the dim light in the room seemed heavier, charged with an unfamiliar weight. In the corner where I was certain I had left the doll the night before, it was no longer on the table. My heart pounded erratically, and with an unease that made me question my sanity, I searched the apartment. On a bookshelf, nestled between some old books, I spotted its cold, lifeless face, as if it had repositioned itself while I slept. This discovery, though subtle, marked the beginning of a series of increasingly disturbing events. In the weeks that followed, my apartment became a stage for suspicions and quiet fears. At times, while tidying up the living room, I would feel as if the doll was following me, moving from one place to another without me noticing. I would look at the table, and the next moment, it would be on a chair, or unexpectedly leaning against the wall. I tried to dismiss my discomfort, convincing myself that I had simply forgotten moving it, but the persistence of these occurrences made doubt settle deep within me. One night, after an especially exhausting day, I sat on the couch to try and relax. When I turned off the television, the silence that followed seemed to amplify every sound, every whisper of wind outside. That was when I heard it, a faint noise, barely perceptible, like tiny footsteps echoing down the hallway. Slowly, with my heart pounding, I followed the sound to my bedroom. There was no one there, yet the feeling of being watched was inescapable. As I turned back toward the living room, my eyes involuntarily met the doll's gaze, still perched on the table, its empty eyes fixed on me. A shiver ran down my spine, an unease that refused to be ignored. The escalation of events did not take long to intensify. One rainy night, as the raindrops composed a mournful melody against the windows, I decided to step outside for some air. The wet, deserted streets created an eerie backdrop, where every reflection in the puddles duplicated my image. But as I walked, I realized I was not alone. In every corner, every shadow, the constant presence of something unseen lingered. At times, through the veil of rain, I could swear I saw a small, fragile figure following my steps, always at a distance, always hidden, yet undeniably there. Back in the apartment, the feeling of being pursued continued to gnaw at my peace. One Sunday afternoon, I decided to organize some documents in my office. As I went through old papers and forgotten photos, I noticed a detail that sent a chill down my spine. The doll was positioned on one of the shelves, among books I had never paid much attention to. Her eyes, once expressionless, seemed to emit a faint glow, reflecting a dark unease. In an uncontrollable impulse, I tried to get rid of her, throwing her out of the window, hoping that this simple act would put an end to my torment. But as if fate's will was stronger than mine, by morning, the doll had inexplicably returned, sitting exactly where I had left her in the living room. Every attempt to distance or hide her resulted in a new cycle of disturbance. The days turned into a whirlwind of small occurrences that, when combined, created an atmosphere of silent terror. On one occasion, while taking a shower, I glimpsed her reflection in the bathroom mirror. She was standing there, watching, motionless. In the solitude of my kitchen, while preparing breakfast, the doll appeared in a corner, almost imperceptible between the shadow and the light spilling into the room. There was not a single moment when I could say with certainty that I was alone. The events extended beyond the walls of my home. During my late-night walks, whenever the city was asleep, I felt that the doll's gaze stretched beyond her mere physical presence. In the displays of closed shops, in the reflection of puddles, even in the windows of other buildings, her empty eyes seemed to follow me, tracking my every move. It was as if she had become embedded in the very essence of the place, a persistent and inescapable shadow that refused to leave me alone. As the days turned into weeks, my mental health began to wither under the relentless weight of her presence. The skepticism that once anchored my rationality gave way to a tangible fear, a sense that I was being consumed by something beyond my comprehension. Conversations with friends and family were met with worried glances and disbelief. No one could understand the terror I was living through, the daily torment of coexisting with something that defied all natural logic. On an especially cold night, after a day when my anxiety seemed to reach its peak, I decided to confront the mystery head-on. Armed with a flashlight and a fragile sense of courage, I began to investigate the corners of my apartment, trying to identify the source of my unease. I searched for signs of intrusion, notes, or any trace that could provide a rational explanation. But no matter how thoroughly I examined each space, I found nothing but echoes of the past and the inescapable feeling of being watched. At the height of my desperation, I uncovered old records in a municipal library that mentioned rituals and legends involving porcelain dolls. Dust-covered documents and poorly bound manuscripts spoke of objects that carried the essence of lost souls, destined to perpetuate a cycle of torment upon those who dared to disturb them. Each page I read seemed to drag me further into an abyss of darkness, where the line between reality and the supernatural became increasingly blurred. Even with this knowledge, there was nothing that could satisfactorily explain what I was experiencing. The doll was not a mere object. She had become an emissary of an ancient presence, a curse that manifested itself subtly yet relentlessly. In every corner, in every reflection, the certainty that her empty eyes followed me was an undeniable reality. I began to feel that every decision, every movement was being watched by that silent entity, always ready to drag me toward a fate with no return. The desperation culminated one night when the silence of the apartment was broken by unintelligible whispers. I was alone, or so I believed, when I heard a low voice, as if coming from a place between worlds. Trembling, I got up and followed the sound to the living room, where my flashlight revealed the doll, now positioned differently, as if waiting for my arrival. Her eyes gleamed under the light, and in that moment, a dark certainty settled in my mind. She was not just an object. She was the embodiment of a malice that refused to let me go. Since then, my existence has been marked by an unending pursuit. The ordinary life I once knew, filled with routine and predictability, has turned into a nightmare where every second is shadowed by the feeling of being watched, judged by eyes that never blink. The walls of my apartment have become silent witnesses to a torment that seeps into my thoughts, my memories, and every unsettling dream. Today, as I write these words, my mind wavers between the attempt to document the unexplainable and the resignation to a terrifying truth. There is no refuge for me. With every step, every breath, the doll's presence reminds me that some encounters cannot be undone, that some marks, no matter how shallow they seem, sink deep into the soul and consume it slowly. The doll's empty eyes, immortal in their expression of sorrow and condemnation, serve as a ceaseless reminder that my life now belongs to a darkness I can never escape. As night approaches and the city sinks into a disturbing silence, I feel the weight of this grim fate. The dim glow of the streetlights fails to dispel the shadows that pursue me, and in every reflection, I see the doll accompanying me, silent and merciless. There is no longer a home where I can feel safe, for the darkness she represents has seeped into every corner of my being. As the days stretch and the nights deepen, I have learned that there is no escaping her silent company. The empty-eyed doll has embedded herself into my life so subtly that over time, she has become a part of me, in every corner and every reflection. There is no escape or relief from this feeling. Her presence is constant, like a shadow that follows my every step. Instead of a torment that screams, it is as if she whispers in silence, the truth that life sometimes binds us to that which we cannot avoid. Now, in the quiet of the nights and the solitude of my days, I have learned to live with that serene and inexplicable gaze. Even though part of me longs for freedom, I understand that her presence is inevitable, a silent, persistent companion that, in a strange way, has made me part of her mystery. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more.